views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most inspired visionaries on the planet in lighthearted, lively dialogue. Join us as we explore the expansive nature of reality in a down-to-earth way, offering you insights and tools, empowering you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Now, here's your host, Christine Upchurch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Christine Upchurch Show, where we have stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. I'm talking to you today from, cloudy Seattle here at Hubbard Radio on AM 1150 KKNW. You might be listening in New York, Connecticut, or Rhode Island on AM 1230 WBLQ, somewhere across the United States on cable radio network, on Transformation Talk Radio, anywhere around the world, or perhaps on podcasts such as through iTunes, on YouTube, Transformation Talk Radio website, my website. But wherever you're listening from today, oh my goodness, we have a powerful show. But before we get into this, we have to say good morning to my better half here in the studio, Mr. Benny Mathers.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. It's quite the rundown you have to mention every single time. It's just getting longer, it seems like, for your list of stations you're on. It's awesome.
It is awesome, and
Yeah.
I love to basically give back to the community, and the community these days is the world. Mm-hmm. So it's fabulous, and I'm really loving your Halloween costume today.
Thank you.
And what is that all over your skin?
Basically, I went as a Skittles character. There's a commercial called The Bleachers from Skittles. It's the candy company, and it's called Bleachers, and it's two characters in there, and one's covered in Skittles pox. Uh-huh. Basically, it's contagious. So I was like, that's perfect. So I glued about 50, maybe 40 Skittles to my body this morning.
And scared one of your sons, right?
I did. I felt super bad before he went to preschool. My other son, Ethan, one of the two of the twins, he's like, Dad, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, it's okay. And he's like, and he touched him. He's like, oh, those are cool. But then Eli didn't want anything about it. He just didn't want to look at me. Yeah. I scared him pretty good. But then, thankfully, Mom showed the video of the commercial to him, and so he kind of eased up a little bit. But still, we'll see how it goes down in about an hour and a half when he comes back to work. And because we have a big contest here every year for Halloween, and so we go a little bit overboard. For me in particular, I have Skittles glued to my face and arms and head.
And I know last year I took flack on Halloween not to dress up. I didn't know that was part of the culture here.
I don't think it's flack. It's just like, what happened? Did you not notice the whole last couple of weeks, how the foyer and the studios looked?
I got with the program here.
You did, and you look fantastic as
a witch.
Okay, any particular? I guess north, south, east, or west?
Well,
I'm just kidding. That's all I'm going to say.
I think about the things that I do in this life, as a healer, as a teacher of how to tap into the quantum field to help shift reality. And using my intuition, I'm thinking, gosh, once upon a time, people were burned at the stake for less. So I figured I'd pay homage to that. And
good for you. Someone has to do that.
Yes, exactly.
Not like gluing candy all over themselves.
Yeah.
That's what I'm paying homage to as well.
Well, I am so excited about my guest today. His name is Mark Nepo, and you've probably already heard of him. Today we're going to be talking about how the most trying circumstances can lead to gifts within them. And I have to tell you, he's got a new book out. It's coming out actually in a couple of days. I got an advance copy, and I am just thrilled with this book. It's called Inside the Miracle, Enduring Suffering, Approaching Wholeness. And Benny, the way, at the very beginning of the book, there's the preface, and the pages aren't even numbered with the typical numbers. There, it's the little, the lowercase Roman numerals. Mm-hmm. Well, I have to tell you, by the second page, the tears were welling up in my eyes. By the end of the preface, the tears were streaming down my face. There's something about this book where reading about Mark's story sort of helps you to expand into your own and explore it in a deep way. And I'm just thrilled. Anyway, Mark has been a spiritual teacher for quite a while. He is a New York Times bestselling author. He's got, I think, 16 books out now. But his book, called The Book of Awakening, was #1 on the New York Times bestselling list. He's been a spiritual guide and a storyteller, a poet, and a teacher for quite a while. He has been on all sorts of media, including Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul Sunday, I think multiple times. And his latest book, again, is called Inside the Miracle, Enduring Suffering, Approaching Wholeness. I'd like to welcome our guest today, Mark Nepo. Mark, welcome to the Christine Upchurch Show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today, and I'm touched that you were touched by the new book.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I read a lot of books, and it's one of the wonderful things about doing this show. And, of course, on my own journey, I've been reading books for quite a while. But there's something about the way your book is written. It's just such beautiful language that actually brings depth and deeper meaning to what it is you're expressing. And it's just so insightful. So I'm very happy. And I have to tell you that, I started putting the little colored tabs on places that I was inspired by, and it eventually started looking like 1970s mod version of a book. So I stopped doing that.
Well, thank you. I think that, of course, we all work at whatever our craft is and everything, but I do feel that with expression in general, when any of us can touch in with honesty to our own experience, at the bottom of that experience, we touch into everyone. Mm-hmm. And so, more than anything, than skill or moving around, manipulating language, it's when any of us chance to do that, whether we write books or whether we're just keeping each other company, that's when all of a sudden we go, wow, I didn't realize this was my story. Mm-hmm. Because all of our lives are ascendant in the one big eternal story.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mark, in various places in this book, a good deal of the subject relates to your cancer that you had quite a while ago. Why are you sharing this with us in this format now?
Well, I think that and let me start by saying, that for me, what I'm about to say, it was cancer, but it doesn't have to be catastrophe or illness, or loss. That everybody, by virtue of being alive, will get an opportunity to be dropped into the depths of life. And when that happens, then there's a different phase of the spiritual journey that begins. And there's a different opportunity and challenge for relationship, for whether people will come with us and be changed or not. So given that, for me, that drop into the depths of life, I'm 64, and I was in my mid-30s when I became ill with a rare form of lymphoma. Uh-huh. And over a 3-year period, went through surgeries and chemo and had a tumor on my brain vanish. And, was pretty upended and came close to death and was damaged in a lot of different ways. Uh-huh. And so, those things, I don't think that I've ever gotten over having cancer. Mm-hmm. I think it changed how I see the world. And it brought me into that depth of life and closer to life. So the reason, and I'm so grateful to Sounds True, my publisher, for giving me the chance and encouraging me to not just bring out work that came immediately after that journey in my 30s, but really look over these last 30 years, because I've been in an inquiry around suffering and obstacle and healing and wholeness, and to kind of gather all of the questions and learnings that I'm still learning, right? Because I don't think we ever stop learning. So to be able to put this together and offer it, and I appreciate how your show is based on trying to help people in their everyday lives, and that's very much what this book is an example, not an instruction. Mm-hmm. It's an invitation for people
Mark, I don't know if you know this about me, but when I was in my late 20s, I experienced the early stages of lymphoma. And at the time, doctors had nothing to offer me, and they said, when it gets to be bad enough, we'll put you on chemo. I was supposed to be on chemo the rest of my life, and I shifted my life dramatically and healed myself. I didn't have to go to the depths that you had to in terms of the physical pain, in terms of being so close to death. And I know that for me, it totally shifted my perspective on reality, and I'm still trying to assimilate what its meaning was to me in my life today.
Oh, well, bless you. You know the journey as well.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and as I said, and for us it was this upending of life as we were knowing it, and I want to emphasize again that it can be almost anything. And the most important thing is not what opens us, but what is opened, and whether we keep each other company. A more recent, example, in the last few years, my wife and I have experienced some significant losses. My father at 93 a few years ago, and then last year, our beloved dog, Mira, passed. It was like a child to us, and recently Susan's mom. And, especially what I want to point here is, when we lost our dog, there were people who didn't quite get the depth of our grief. They kind of looked and said, well, it was just a dog, And one of the things that emphasizes for me, which is why I bring it up, is that, it doesn't matter what it might seem like to anyone else, what it is that opens us to the miracle of this journey. It could be, you could be going for an interview for a job that you've dreamed of, and you don't get the second interview, and you're devastated. And someone could say, well, it was just an interview. And it doesn't matter. What matters is once we're open, do we go there together? Do we ask each other, what do you see? What do you feel? How close are you to life now? What do things look like and feel like now that you can open and you can't close? That's the journey.
Beautiful. Well, we have to go to a quick break, but when we return, how do we find the gifts within the suffering? More with Mark Nepo when we return here in a few moments.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
Serenity Bliss Holistic Spa is a complete approach to wellness. Serenity Bliss offers integrated therapies for whole body health, from facials to massage, from laser skin treatments to herbal wellness, from chiropractic care to energy healing. We work with teens who want to put their best face forward, adults of all ages who want to maintain that youthful glow, and anyone who wants to enjoy vibrant well-being head to toe. Serenity Bliss Holistic Spa is bringing the European approach to restoring natural beauty and wellness here to the Seattle area. Located on the east side off the beaten path, yet just minutes from the freeway. If you'd like to experience the joy of relaxation, skincare excellence, and total wellness, then come experience your Serenity Bliss. To learn more or to schedule an appointment, visit SerenityBlissHolisticSpa.com. That's SerenityBlissHolisticSpa.com. Or call 206-229-0086.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. For centuries, spiritual traditions have talked about how humans have an energy field, or aura, surrounding them. Although skeptical scientists refuted this for decades, science is now beginning to catch up with spirituality. Scientists can actually measure light emanating from living beings, so they can measure the human aura, which in scientific terms is known as the biofield. Many medical practitioners around the world use an instrument to evaluate a patient's biofield for the purpose of diagnosing illness. They understand that imbalanced or insufficient light in a person's energy field indicates a physical or emotional problem. The good news? There are ways to balance and increase your light, resulting in greater well-being. For more information, please check out stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW and Transformation Talk Radio. I'm talking today to Mark Nepo, who is the author of a gazillion books, including a #1 New York Times best-selling book. And his latest that comes out on Sunday is called Inside the Miracle, Enduring Suffering, Approaching Wholeness. Mark, you know, we were talking about the suffering within experiencing cancer, and you were talking about how, you know, wherever the suffering arises, it sort of opens us in new ways. What are the gifts within this suffering that we humans have a tendency to do?
Well, you know, and I think that, and let's talk for a minute about suffering, because, you know, it's natural that as human beings, you know, we want to pull away from that, and we want to. And we're taught, I think, misguidedly to, you know, if you're sad, run to happiness. If you're, you know, going through things, and it never works, because it's the depth and wholeness of our humanity that is our greatest strength. And you know, the word suffer literally means to feel keenly. And of course, to know joy, you have to feel keenly as well. And so, one of the kind of secrets hidden in the open about life that for me is that it's the wholeness of life that is nourishing and healing, and you can't separate it out. So it's like a glass of water. We all know that water is made of hydrogen and oxygen, but I can't say to you, I'll only take the hydrogen, please.
Right.
Because then it's no longer water and it's no longer quenching. And somehow the mystery of life has been made just difficult enough that we need each other. And I think that's to ensure the journey of love. So, you know, I have to drink the whole water of life to get the resource out of it and not be crippled or even killed by the difficult things. But let me offer also another way to think about suffering, and that is that it's really the friction of the wheel of life. So in nature, we're so accustomed that the elements erode and wear nature down to reveal its inner beauty, whether it's cliffs that are pounded for hundreds of years by the sea, or mountains that are worn away by the endless winds, and trees that beautiful old trees that are scarred and worn for their beauty. Well, experience wears us down and our covering until we reveal our inner beauty, if we can stand up to what wears us down. And so just as coal can be pressurized into a diamond, experience pressurizes us and condenses us until the gem that we carry inside us is what we show the world. And this is one of the deep things I've learned from being pressurized and worn down.
Right. You know, Mark, I think that there are a lot of people on their journey who sort of view the suffering as something to get to the other side of, so that they're looking forward to being that gem, but they want to hurry through that pressurization that turns that coal into the diamond. Is that experiencing the wholeness? Are there any problems with taking that approach?
Well, I think that And let's be clear, too, we're all just comparing notes. I don't have any answers. That's the beauty of conversations and like we have on your show and the history of stories forever, is we're just comparing notes. Nobody knows how to do this. And I think that at once, whoever is going through something difficult, we have to trust their inner wisdom and follow their lead. And so I think that it's very natural that, when I'm going through pain, I can't wait for it to be over.
Right,
when I'm afraid, I don't want to be afraid. But what we often do, and what I've done, is we extrapolate our, and project out, and we make that very natural response a code to live by.
Ooh,
and that to me doesn't work. It's never worked. So, no, there is no getting over. There is no shortcut. The only way is through, and to have compassion for ourselves and each other, that while we're going through it, of course, I'm not going to say, give me more. I want more pain.
Right.
But to while we're going through whatever we're feeling, to realize and remember, I'm larger than my pain. Even though pain and fear and worry introduce themselves by their nature by overcoming us. When I have a moment of pain, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But then, so let's take, for example, we've all stubbed our toe sometime, like let's say on a rock, on a hike, where you've really stubbed it, where you think, oh my God, I might have broken it. And in that first moment, well, that pain isn't just in your toe, it's everywhere.
Right.
And then after the alarm, and it really hurts, and you might even limp for a while, now it throbs. And this is the point. Because now we become aware again of the rest of life. The sun is still shining. The nature around us is still beautiful. Whoever we're hiking with still loves us. And now our attention is how do we right size, not minimize, but right size the pain. So, one of the deepest lessons for me was going through a very botched first chemo treatment in which I was in a Holiday Inn room in New York City, getting sick every 20 minutes, throwing up.
Oh, my goodness.
And this was 2 weeks after having a rib removed in my back, so it was even more painful.
Oh.
And being, we eventually went to the emergency room, but not knowing this must be it. It can't go on. But it did go on. And but being slouched on the floor there as the sun was coming up, and realizing that to be broken, there's no reason to see all things as broken.
Ooh.
That not to minimize what I was going through. That was my life. That's where I was. I was scared. I was in pain. I didn't know what to do. I was exhausted. And the sun was coming up, and somewhere else nearby, someone was making love, and somewhere else a little further on down the road, somebody was being born. And so, again, the wholeness of life is what is healing. Not, we tend in our pain to say, oh, the world is a painful place.
Right.
Or we say, oh, because it's beautiful, therefore my pain doesn't matter. And I think we're challenged to open our hearts and honor what we're going through and honor the rest of the mystery, because the way water fills a hole, I needed everything that wasn't broken to help me heal.
Right. Yeah, I think we do have a tendency to extrapolate or project what it is we're experiencing onto the rest of the world. And I love the way you shifted your perspective to embrace all as opposed to just what your experience was in such an intense situation.
Well, and it's so interesting, and this is kind of a paradox, that, when we're in pain, we need the company of those who understand what it is to be in pain. When we're afraid, we need the company of people and the compassion of people who know what it is to be afraid.
Right.
And I need exposure to everything that's not in pain the safety and the beauty of every. We need to let beauty in while we're suffering, not just to distract us, but because beauty is part of the medicine.
That makes sense. And I think that sometimes through our support system, by design, that it's almost like they're organizations to support people when they've suffered in a particular way, whether we're talking molestation or through alcoholism or whatever. It's almost like it becomes the focus as opposed to just a piece of the whole.
Yes. And, one of the things, and this is, I'll share a quick story that's a great old teaching story from India that's very helpful about pain and approaching pain. And so there's a master and an apprentice, because there's always a master and an apprentice. And the master finds his apprentice annoying because he's always complaining about life. So he finally says to the apprentice, he says, look, get a handful of salt, put it in a glass of water, and come back to me, and do it quietly. and so the apprentice comes back, and he has the salt in the glass, and the master says, drink it. So the apprentice takes and drinks from the glass, and he spits it out. And the master says, well, what's the matter? He says, oh, it's bitter. The master says, I want you to take the same exact handful of salt, no more, no less, and follow me quietly. So the apprentice cups in his hand the same amount of salt, and he follows the master, who leads him to a lake. And he tells him to put the salt in the lake. And now he says, kneel down and drink from the lake, which he does. And then water's dribbling down his chin, and the master says, well, and he says, oh, it's refreshing. And the master looks at him and he says, stop being a glass, become a lake.
Oh, I love that. That's great. We have to go to another quick break, but more with Mark Nepo when we return here on the Christine Upchurch Show.
On the cutting edge of the new mainstream, Christine Upchurch is passionate about bringing together science, psychology, and spirituality in a way that can be applied to our everyday lives for true transformation. The Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey, engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and Transformation Talk Radio.
I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. What does the word healing mean? Many think that healing merely means eliminating symptoms. However, based on my many years as a healer, I have a much broader perspective on the word. Healing can manifest in a variety of ways, including having physical problems resolved, becoming more emotionally centered, experiencing better relationships, gaining greater clarity, and feeling more spiritually connected. True healing always includes some level of transformation. Whatever form healing takes, there is one commonality, an improvement in quality of life. To me, the highest form of healing goes beyond aligning with wellness. It comes from recognizing our soul's voice and allowing it to speak through us. And in that sense, don't we all yearn to heal into our wholeness? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW, WBLQ, CRN, and Transformation Talk Radio. I'm talking to New York Times best-selling author Mark Nepo, who has a new book out called Inside the Miracle, Enduring Suffering, Approaching Wholeness. Now, Mark, before the break, you were talking about the story from India where the master had his student take the salt and put it in the water, the glass versus the lake. What's the message in that?
Well, and yes, and the wonderful thing of these anonymous ancient stories, so the lesson is that when we experience pain, everyone gets their handful of salt. No one goes through life without having to deal with pain. But what we do with it and what we put it in makes the difference. So when he tells him to stop being a glass, a small container, and become a lake, he's saying the best we can do when we experience pain is to enlarge our sense of things so that it won't eliminate our pain, but it will right-size it. And if we stay small, not only will our pain intensify, but we'll become bitter. The taste of that salt will be bitter. But when it can go into a lake, the saltiness dissipates and it becomes right-sized. And so, it really helps when I was going through my journey, and still to this day when things happen. At first when pain happens, we tense up and we go, oh, my God, I hope this doesn't last long, which is natural.
Uh-huh.
And then we're always asked to expand, to breathe, to enlarge our sense of things so that we're not in the pain, but the pain is in us.
Mm-hmm.
So that we're not in the fear is in us. Initially, when fear and pain and worry come upon us, we are in them. They are so large.
Uh-huh.
But that's part of our own healing practice. That's part of our own approach to wholeness is, okay, how can I now let that be in me as opposed to me being in it?
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts to become manageable. Nobody likes pain and fear and worry, but then it starts to become manageable.
Mark, one of the things you mentioned in the last segment was about the pain that comes from losing loved ones, whether it be a parent or a pet. And I would love to give people a taste of your writing. So is it okay with you if I just read the poem As If to Say?
As if, yeah. Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, it'd be great if you've got your book there. It's.
I do.
Yeah, okay, wonderful.
As if to say, and that, yeah.
It's on page 63.
This is about my father, and just toward the end of his life, he had a slow avalanche to his death, and being with him in the hospital, where a very important moment came between us. It's called As If to Say. After his fourth stroke, he's given up trying to speak. For the first time, he doesn't know me. Like a worker trapped in a mine, he looks up as if I'm a stranger happening on the scene. His eyes are wider than anyone life can bear. I take his hand and say, I'm your son. He looks about as if to say, am I still here? I collapse into a free fall as the bird in my heart that has followed his voice falls into the canyon we both have bridged. Later, he's back behind his eyes. He grips my hand fiercely, looking at me, knowing me more deeply than I can remember. In that moment, I am certain he understands everything. I wanted this depth between us my whole life. He can no longer pull his fear up around him, his body breaking away, piece by piece. Wordlessly, we have the conversation of a lifetime. He won't let go of my hand or veer his gaze. The TV across the hall is blaring. The nurse drops a pan in the hall, and my father, on the cliff before eternity, lies on his side, looking through me into the sun.
Wow, that is so beautiful. So beautiful.
No, thank you.
And I particularly love the line, wordlessly, we have the conversation of a lifetime.
Well, and I feel certain in that moment that we did. And, my father and I, we were estranged for many years, but we were very close in the last 5 years of his life.
Uh-huh.
And I look after, I'm 64, and, it wasn't easy for me and my mother. They were very, they were Depression-era children of immigrants who were very intelligent but very literal-minded, and they get a poet for a son. So we never really spoke the same language. But there he was, 93, And I knew that he gripped my hand because he suddenly was where he knew that I lived. And he understood. And I simply held his hand, and, I wound up after a few minutes of silence just saying, I know, Dad, I know, it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. And he knew because of my cancer journey that I had been where he was. And it was, and this is something that I share that's very humbling is, when we do, we're with loved ones who are dying, or we're close to death, and, it's very natural to say, oh, my God, I don't want to miss that moment when they go, or whatever the moment is that's coming between us. And one of the things that I learned from my journey with my father and other dear ones I've lost is there's no telling when that moment will appear. It's not always as we imagine at the end or during the last breath. And, my father lived for 6 more months after this moment. But that was the moment. That was the moment that I knew it when I was in it. And I didn't know if we'd have a moment or when it would come. And so, this just being open, that, and not just in death, but in life too. We imagine in love, there'll be this peak moment, when I'll fall in love, or when the love will be there. Or, and that I think it comes at the most unexpected times. My wife and I have been together over 20 years, and I remember this was before our dog Mira passed, but it's probably 10 years ago. But it was just a beautiful fall day. My wife's a potter, and we were outside, and I was doing errands, bringing cleaning up things and branches in the yard, and she was sitting on a bench in our yard, working, making a pot with clay with her hands, and our dog was just sitting next to her. And all of a sudden, I saw them in the light, and leaves were falling around them, and that was the moment. That was the moment. It was like all of my dreams came true. And I didn't know it would be on a day like that, but just living in an ordinary moment.
It's really beautiful. Mark, it's sort of interesting for me because for about a year and a half before my mother passed, she was getting dementia. She was having a hard time speaking, and yet it was fascinating for me to watch her somewhat hardened ego to be falling away, and she got so that she was really good at giving loving. We'd walk into her apartment, and she would grab our hands and kiss the back of our hands, and so in a sense, she was speaking love in a way that she could never fully do before she had the dementia. So I never expected to find that kind of connection with my mother within that scenario.
Well, and Christine, that's a wonderful, thank you. That's a wonderful example of what we were talking about earlier, of how life erodes us to our inner beauty if we can withstand the difficulties that take our coverings away.
Right.
Sometimes there are 2 ways that human beings mostly grow. One is by shedding, willfully shedding, and the other is by being broken open. And we get chances to do both. Sometimes at the same time, but we always get chances to do both.
Yes. Well, Mark, I'm very curious about your perspective on loss, and we're getting close to break, but I want to sort of set the scene for you. When we come back, I'm very curious about your perspective about loss through death, and it's something that we all experience if we make it very far in life, and it's probably one of the most profoundly difficult things that we experience, and you touched upon that earlier. I'm very curious about your perspective on, can we find gifts within these deep losses? We're going to go to a quick break. More with Mark Nepo when we return. I'm Christine Upchurch, and this is a Stellar Reflections Minute. As a former research statistician, my scientific background is what many would call sensible. For more than a decade now, I have been working in the field of energy medicine, facilitating sessions and teaching around the world. People from the mainstream often ask me, How did a sensible woman like you end up working in such an alternative field? Implicit in their question is the underlying assumption that the field of subtle energy, such as energy healing and intuition, isn't sensible. But I believe it is very sensible. Even scientists are able to measure aspects of this. Approaching life from an energetic perspective brings us new opportunity for healing and transformation. And from a practical standpoint, even if you can't rationally explain how something works, if you experience a shift from it, then doesn't it make it pretty sensible? Please visit stellarreflections.com or call 425-999-9836. That's 425-999-9836. Have you been seeing numbers like 111 and 222 everywhere you go? Do you feel that the universe may be trying to get your attention, perhaps offering a message of some sort? As it turns out, numerical patterns and certain types of geometry form the very fabric of our reality, from cells under a microscope to the astronomy of our night sky. At Stellar Reflections, we offer special sessions which tap into these patterns, designed specifically to support you on your journey. The 111 and 222 activations are sessions activating new patterns in your energy field, which in turn can help you create new patterns in your life. After just one session with a practitioner, either in person or via distance, clients report gaining greater clarity, becoming more intuitive, and honoring their inner truth as they move forward in their lives. Curious about what these transformational sessions might do for you? Call 425-999-9836 or visit stellarreflections.com. That's stellarreflections.com. Welcome back to the Christine Upchurch Show here on KKNW, CRN, and Transformation Talk Radio. You know, Mark, I would love for our listeners to be able to connect with you over the internet. What's your website?
Oh, it's marknepo.com. And also there's a sister site, 3 Intentions, all one word, where I'm, all my books and things and my teaching, speaking schedules there as well.
Can you please repeat that website, that last website?
Yeah. The last website, so it's marknepo.com and 3 Intentions, the number 3 Intentions, all spelled out in one word.
Okay, great. You know, we've been talking about loss both during the show some as well as during the break. And I know that losing a parent, some people have to experience the loss of losing a child and losing a pet, losing dear friends, family members. It's probably one of the most painful things we can experience as humans. Are there gifts that we can find within this process of grieving?
Oh, absolutely. And, they're hard gifts, but I think this is with everything that we go through, whether it's we're talking about loss through death or suffering or limitation, when we can make our way through, they all shift and deepen, for me anyway, our understanding and our closeness. They bring us closer to the miracle of life. And I think specifically with, I've lost, I think the first person I really lost that was significant to me was my grandmother, who was so dear to me growing up. And this was during my cancer journey that she passed away. And I think there's this kind of strange paradox that when we actually grieve, when I have grieved and when I cry and when the depths of my heart are opened, it's almost through that opening that who I'm grieving for gets through there and goes deeper into me and becomes more a part of me.
Oh,
and so, like, all these years later, it's harder and harder to bring up, without looking at a picture, my grandmother's face, but I feel her presence more and more inside me. And I think that, the first gift, obviously, is that loss, and then I think that old thing is true. You only feel loss if you've loved. Right. And so there's no way to avoid loss if you're human, except to not love. And that's, at least in my opinion, I think most people, that's work. And a lot of people, out of fear of the pain of capacity to love, and that leads us to a living death.
Right, right.
So there's no, if you love and hold nothing back, you will experience loss. And so, the loss, what's opened up in us, and this is an example of what we said earlier about that what opens us, what is opened in us is more important than what opens us.
Uh-huh.
And so the loss of a loved one or anything, or someone that matters so dearly to us opens us. And, I know that in my father's death and in our pet Mira's death and in Susan's mother's death, all within the last 3 years, in that ache of missing them, I know I and my wife, we wind up, what we do, we all do this. We look for them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We look for them in the rustle of trees or in the sudden light or in a song they liked or in a movie they talked about. And what starts to happen is that because we can't find them because they're gone, our love for them makes us fall in love with the world again.
Yes.
It makes us find them everywhere because they are now everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And this is a paradox that's at first hard to accept. And I think another kind of gift, there's an old another kind of ancient story about, maybe you've heard of Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh is the oldest narrative in the Western lineage that we know, and it goes back to an Assyrian tale. But anyway, so Gilgamesh is a bored and kind of empty king. He can't get in touch with life, and he winds up going to war just to stir up some excitement in his life, and he loses in the war his only friend. And now in his arrogance, because he's king, he says, well, there's got to be somebody else I can talk to and get I demand my friend to be brought back to life. So he's brought to the Assyrian god, Utnapishtim. Not a great name, Utnapishtim. And when he gets there after a long journey, he says, I want my friend brought back to life. And he looks, and Utnapishtim says, you know what, you at least as a human, you can forget. As a God, I can never forget. I carry all the grief with me of everyone forever. But I would give my being a God if I could be human and learn from what's open in you for what you've lost. That's what he says to him. And so again, for me, it's the way I've learned to see the world through my cancer journey and through my loss of loved ones, is that we are opened by everything we go through to a deeper, indestructible center. Yeah. My heart, though, so far, it may not happen next time, but there's been a handful of times across my life, a constellation of times where the pain or the grief or the loss, my heart's been shattered. I didn't think it would be able to be put back together.
Right.
And of course, it's put back together, but in a new way. And at least to this point in my life, it's always happened that not only has my heart been put back together, but I've been closer to life. My heart has been bigger, stronger, gentler, and more loving for what I went through.
And that's quite the gift. That's quite the gift.
That is the greatest gift of all.
Yeah. One of the things that's fascinated me about my grieving the loss of my parents has been I've felt like I've released some of the illusions. It's almost like I've gone through the grieving process not only as me as the adult having lost them, but at every age and stage, the 3-year-old, the 6-year-old, the 9-year-old. And as I've gone through with the release, it's almost like it's helped me to understand more fully who they were, who I was, and it's opened me to a greater degree to their love that I think I had blocked in a variety of ways because of my issues with them. And so it's been a very heart-opening experience, but it's been sort of surprising to me because You're right. It's like when you experience these deep losses, your heart is shattered, and it feels like, you're never going to be able to feel whole like that again. But somehow it works.
Somehow it works, and this is a mystery. And like we said earlier, no one knows how to do it. But just to support anyone who's listening, that not only can we do it, and that it also makes us, we don't have to do it alone.
Hey, Mark, just 1 second. Is there another area? We're kind of losing your signal there a little bit, if you don't mind.
Oh.
Can you repeat what you just said? Maybe go to another area. We just have a couple minutes left. We don't want to miss this out on this.
Yeah.
There we go. Thanks.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah,
so
that's
far,
better.
yep.
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. So not to ask for help. One of the things through my cancer journey and also through loss, it's natural you feel the loss of a dear friend, of a parent, of a child, of a loved one. And there's a natural period of, oh my God, it's irreplaceable, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when we're hurting enough, like when I was in those waiting rooms during my cancer journey, you reach out to the stranger next to you and you say, help. And then you say, can I help you? And then you realize that we weren't strangers.
Right.
And so we have this invisible, this kind of illusion of boundaries between us, that when we go through deep loss and we go through difficulty and we go through pain and fear, if we can have the courage to ask for help, we have new closenesses. We fall in love again.
Yeah.
It doesn't replace what was irreplaceable, but it gives us where to go with our new, fresh heart.
That's beautiful, Mark. This hour has flown by. I want to thank you for joining us here today. And I want to say to all the listeners out there, if you're on your path, if you want to open to more, get Mark's new book, Inside the Miracle, Enduring Suffering, Approaching Wholeness. Thanks so much, Mark.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
And thanks for listening again today. And I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the Christine Upchurch Show, stellar conversations to illuminate your journey. Each week, this show engages some of the most outstanding visionaries on the planet in lively dialogue to inspire you to become that bright light you're meant to be. Join Christine every Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time on KKNW, AM 1150, and TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more information about the transformative healing work of Christine, visit www.stellarreflections.com. And for weekly topics, visit www.transformationtalkradio.com.